Now that the interior is finished and the body is still curing for a bit, I decided to move on to all the chassis components in the meantime. So I firstly started with priming all of the parts, then applying a couple of different shades of black, some flat black, some semi-gloss black, some textured black, and then also started adding some metallic colors here and there for the disc brakes, the engine, the exhaust, and all that stuff. Since I didn't want to go with the same color on the wheels that I used on the disc brakes to simulate the carbon ceramics, I wanted a bit of a finer metallic to simulate the sort of metal paint-ish look that you see nowadays on these cars. I decided to try out some of the new Zero Paints metal colors to give a look that I was after, and in the end it was a really cool color and kind of simulates the look that an actual wheel has. With that all said and done, I decided to move on to the engine, also trying some of those new paints out as well. I really like them. They cover really quick and easy, and they really give the feel and look of some alclad metal paints. Both are just fine. I don't really prefer any, but I just wanted to try both of them out. And to show you that I don't hate alclad whatsoever, I also decided to use some of that. I firstly painted the exhaust in the same color as I did the engine block to give it a base, and then weathered it a tiny bit with some burnt iron from alclad. I was debating with myself whether I wanted to go with some yellow calipers or some gold, and in the end I ended up using some gold as I really like that. Also wouldn't have minded the yellow, but the gold is a bit more classy behind the wheels and in combination with the body color in my opinion. In order to add a bit more depth and detail to the wheels, I decided to add some panel line accent color on all of these wheel nuts in order to show them a bit more and not have them totally blend into the rest of the wheel. With that all done, I moved on to some other parts like the engine pieces and the disc brakes to also add some of that accent color to make some of those darker, deeper spots a little bit more shaded and look a bit more different instead of one even clean color. There weren't really a lot of pieces that needed to be detailed out to an extreme amount, just a couple of bits of silver here and there. On the engine inlet for the air intake there were a couple of pieces that needed to be painted silver, and then there were a lot of bolts and nuts everywhere, especially on some of those valve covers, and also a couple in the engine bay area and the chassis as well, which I just painted silver with a brush. The ignition system was also painted with a black, but in this case a flat black to make it stand out a bit more from that texture black of the rest of the valve cover. I also applied a couple of decals here and there, a couple on the engine inlet and also some on the disc brakes and the wheels as well. All the decals are now in place and nicely dried, so I could put the tires on the wheels and also add the poly caps inside of the wheels, and then could move on to doing a bit of assembly for the rest of the chassis components. All of it was just glued together with some normal super glue, in this case BSI MaxiCure. I have links to a lot of the product tools I use in the description, so if you want to know more, check out those links. With the main chassis now finished, all four wheels in place and still turnable, I could move on to the engine. All the parts were detailed earlier in the video, so I just needed to glue them all together and put them in place. With the main engine bay and the engine itself now put onto the chassis, one final piece was left to do on the interior that I had forgotten about in the last video. Still, that doesn't really fix the dial issue, as that is pretty much a plain white decal, but it does break it up a tiny bit. With that done, this could also be glued onto the chassis, and for now the chassis is done, and I can move on to painting a lot of black parts on the body in the next video.